In the quiet streets of the affluent neighborhood of Brentwood, Tennessee, Elijah Carter drove his BMW 7 Series smoothly along the road, the soft hum of the engine mixing with the cool night air. The streetlights cast long shadows over the pristine houses and neatly manicured lawns, the high iron gates standing like silent sentinels. Elijah had driven this route countless times before, past the grand homes, the towering oak trees, the familiar scenery. But tonight, something felt different. Or maybe it wasn't different at all. Perhaps it was just the inevitable moment creeping in. He noticed the flashing red and blue lights in his rearview mirror before the sound of the siren even reached him. His jaw tightened, but he didn't react right away. Instead, he took a slow, measured breath, grounding himself, reminding himself that this moment was one he had prepared for his entire life. His hand tightened briefly on the steering wheel, but he remained calm. The flashing lights painted the interior of his car in shifting, rhythmic bursts of color, and for a brief moment, he saw his reflection in the side mirror. His dark skin, framed by the luxury of his car. He knew what this looked like. A black man alone in a high-end vehicle, driving through a neighborhood where people like him still raised questions. He signaled and pulled smoothly to the side of the road, bringing the car to a stop under the warm, golden glow of the street lamp. The weight of the moment settled on his shoulders, an expectation, an anxiety that he had learned to carry long ago. With deliberate movements, he reached for his phone, unlocked it with a quick swipe, and placed it on the dashboard. One tap, and the camera was recording. He wasn't expecting trouble, but he had learned long ago not to trust the narrative someone else might try to spin. He'd seen it too many times. The police car idled behind him, its headlights spilling cold, artificial light onto the back of his vehicle. The officer inside hadn't moved yet. Elijah could feel the hesitation, the careful assessment happening inside that cruiser. Whoever was sitting there was checking his plates, running his information, searching for anything to justify the interaction. He took another deep breath, feeling the familiar pressure in his chest, the weight of 1,000 unspoken rules that he had learned over the years of navigating life as a black man in America. Keep your hands visible. Move slowly. Speak clearly. De-escalate before there's even a hint of escalation. Elijah had played this game before. The officer, a man named Officer Caleb Walker, approached the driver's side window with calculated steps, stopping just short of the vehicle. His voice was flat, impersonal as he asked for Elijah's license and registration. Elijah kept his hands on the wheel, fingers spread wide to keep them visible. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Officer Walker asked, his gaze scanning Elijah's face, searching for something. Elijah's voice remained steady as he replied, "I wasn't aware I had done anything wrong." Walker's eyes narrowed slightly, his lips curling into a smirk. "You failed to signal at the last turn." Elijah blinked, not responding immediately. He knew the turn. He had signaled, but he didn't argue. He nodded slowly and spoke again, his tone even. "My license and registration are in my glove compartment. I'm going to reach for them now." Walker didn't answer right away. He just stood there, assessing Elijah. His tailored suit, the gleam of a watch on his wrist, the neatly trimmed beard. Elijah could feel the officer's eyes on him, a quiet judgment hanging in the air. Finally, Walker spoke. "Go ahead, but make it slow." A spark of irritation flared in Elijah's chest, but he kept his face neutral, his movements deliberate as he retrieved his documents from the glove compartment and handed them over. Walker took them without a word, but didn't examine them right away. Instead, he held them loosely in his hand, his gaze still fixed on Elijah, as if waiting for something, some reaction. Elijah's jaw tightened, but his face remained impassive. He could feel the tension rising, the undercurrent of something darker in the air. Walker glanced down at the documents, his eyes flickering over them for a moment. "You live around here?" he asked, his voice suddenly casual, as if they were engaging in friendly small talk. "Yes," Elijah answered evenly, "about 2 miles down the road." Walker clicked his tongue, glancing back down at the address as if it didn't quite sit right with him. "So, what brings you this way?" he asked, his tone almost too casual, as though the question was a test. Elijah exhaled slowly, his gaze steady as he shook his head slightly. "I wasn't aware I needed a reason to drive in my own neighborhood." For a moment, the air between them thickened, the tension palpable. Walker's posture shifted, his fingers twitching near his holster. He took a step closer to the window, his voice lowering. "I'd be careful with that attitude," he warned. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Elijah remained calm, his voice just as steady as before. "How exactly am I making this harder?" Walker's eyes darkened, and the silence between them stretched for what felt like an eternity. The officer didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned and walked back toward his cruiser, his boots crunching on the gravel beneath him. Elijah let out a slow breath, his hands still resting on the wheel. His phone was still recording. He had a feeling it would come in handy. The officer lingered in his cruiser, the silence stretching between them. Elijah knew what was happening. Walker was searching for a reason to escalate things, trying to find a reason to make the situation more than it was. Elijah had seen it before. He knew how this worked. He wasn't the one who needed to be afraid. A few moments later, the radio crackled to life, and a voice called through the static, asking for a status update. Walker's voice was calm when he responded, confirming that he was conducting a routine traffic stop. The voice on the other end acknowledged it, but there was a brief pause. Elijah felt the shift in the air, the weight of something hanging in the balance. The hesitation was enough. The officer was struggling to find an excuse. Elijah knew this, and he could feel the shift in power. There were no warrants, no violations, nothing that would justify the stop. It was a simple traffic stop, nothing more. But the officer didn't know how to back down now. The sound of footsteps approaching broke his train of thought. He saw the flash of another police cruiser pulling up behind the first. A man stepped out, moving quickly but controlled, his uniform sharp under the flashing lights. Sergeant Nathaniel Briggs. Elijah didn't know him, but he could read the situation in his eyes. He wasn't happy about what had just happened. "Take your hand off your weapon," Briggs ordered, his voice firm. Walker hesitated but finally obeyed, lowering his hand from his holster. Briggs turned his attention to Elijah, his gaze steady. "Are you okay, sir?" Elijah exhaled slowly, his chest still tight from the tension that had built up in the moments before. "I'm fine," he said, though he knew it wasn't entirely true. "Do you want to file a formal complaint?" Briggs asked, his voice softer now, but there was no mistaking the seriousness in his words. Elijah hesitated. He could feel Walker's eyes on him, waiting for him to react, to give in to the pressure. But he had been here before. He had seen what happened when people let things go. This time, he wasn't walking away. Not without making a statement. "No," Elijah said, his voice calm. "But I think you should know, this isn't over." Briggs turned back to Walker, his voice low but unyielding. "Get in your car. You're done here." For the first time that night, Walker looked rattled. He stood there for a moment, his lips parted as if he wanted to say something, but whatever it was, he swallowed it down. He didn't say a word as he turned and stalked back to his cruiser, his shoulders tight with frustration. Elijah watched him go, his eyes tracing the stiff movements, the way Walker's jaw clenched in anger. It was clear now he had expected to be in control, but Elijah had shifted the dynamic. In that moment, he had taken control. The sound of Walker's cruiser pulling away broke the silence. The neighborhood settled back into its quiet rhythm. But Elijah knew this was far from over. The footage of the encounter would circulate. It would be analyzed, discussed, debated. Some would claim it was a result of a broken system. Others would dismiss it as an isolated incident. But for Elijah, it was a reminder that even in his success, even with the comfort and safety of his wealth and education, the color of his skin was a constant variable in the equation. As he drove home and parked in his driveway, the weight of what had happened lingered. He didn't feel relief. Not yet. The feeling of what could have been still sat in his chest, pressing down. Inside the house, his wife, Lena, was waiting. She had already seen the video. Of course she had. There was no way it wouldn't have reached her by now. As soon as Elijah stepped inside, she reached for his hand, her grip firm, a silent promise that she was there. And for the first time that night, he felt the weight of it all. What had almost happened? Ease just a little, but deep down, he knew that what had happened to him wasn't unique. It wasn't just about one officer's actions. It was about a system that allowed men like Walker to act without fear of consequence. And no matter how much power Elijah had, no matter the status he had worked so hard to build, it was a system that would continue. Tomorrow, it would happen to someone else. Someone who didn't have the privilege of a phone call that could dismantle a career. Elijah leaned against the door, his fingers still tightly gripping Lena's hand. As the weight of the night's events settled over him, he had made it home tonight. But so many others without the privilege of his position hadn't.